Hello and welcome to Surgery Secrets, where we go behind the scenes to uncover secrets about surgery you won't hear in the classroom. My name's Stephanie, and today we're sitting down with Dr. Reid. Let's get started. So, Dr. Reid, first we're going to start with some quick fire short answer questions, and we'll start off with some easy ones. So, can you tell us your
Okay.
name?
Sue Reid.
And what's your occupation?
I'm an anesthesiologist.
And where do you work?
I work at the Grey Nuns Hospital in Edmonton.
And can you tell us what your job entails?
It entails the perioperative care and management of patients coming for surgery. Um, Used to be elective and emergent, but now I don't do call because I'm really old, as you can see. And also the care of obstetric patients. Providing pain control and surgery and anesthesia as required in obstetrics, which is my thing.
And we're going to switch a little bit here. What's your favorite color?
Purple.
And your favorite food?
Fish and chips.
And your favorite movie?
My favorite movie is one you will never have heard of, which is Pirate Radio. It's very British. It's of a certain genre, and I love it. Nobody else knows about it.
Oh, I haven't heard of it.
If you watch it, don't watch it with your grandma.
Okay, good to know.
It's just good British, humor.
Yeah, okay. What is your favorite organ of the body?
Oh, the heart.
And what's the last book you read?
The last really good book I read is We Are All Perfectly Fine by Dr. Gillian Horton. And medical student, anyone who's listening to this, get hold of that book and read it. It is wonderful, and find everything that Dr. Horton has written, spoken. She's on all kinds of podcasts and things. That's the best book I've read recently.
You've heard it here, folks. Go check it out.
No question.
And lastly, can you recommend to me a TV show to watch?
Don't watch much TV, but Call My Agent I enjoyed.
Okay, great. Thank you. So you've passed the quick fire round, and now we're going to move on to our nitty gritty questions.
Okay.
So we're going to start off with one here. Who is your biggest influence, either professionally or personally?
I don't have one person. I don't. I have a myriad of people. Professionally, I would say the people in the physician wellness community. They're a really supportive community. They feel like my tribe. So there's them. But I also draw on people from other disciplines, like in the arts. And a person who's had a really big influence on me is my clown teacher, who is Jan Henderson, who is a world famous clown teacher here in Edmonton at the U of A.
Can you tell us a little bit more about her?
Oh, she's amazing. She has her own clown, but she's been teaching forever, and she just has the ability to just make you feel comfortable and make even a straight up English person feel that they can be silly and play. And so she is the godmother of my clown, and my clown is Iris, who was birthed in one of her workshops. And I think we forget about play and humor, and I'm all about that now.
Mhm. And I can only imagine how busy and hectic, I guess, school would have been for you when you might have had to be more serious and focused. Can you tell us a little bit more about what the most memorable moment during your training might have been?
Well, I was thinking about this, and of course, it was quite a while ago, right? And I did most of my training in Britain. So I've had a very circuitous past, and I've given up medicine on a couple of occasions. I'm going to be straight and honest. And one of the most memorable moments was actually when I decided I would take a break, and I thought it was going to be a permanent one. It didn't turn out to be one. But when I decided to go on an overland trip, to leave Britain, go on an overland trip with 20 unknown people for 7.5 months. And I'm afraid I resigned my residency and went on the trip. And it was the best thing I'd ever done. And the day that I actually finished at that point to go on the trip was the most memorable moment of my residency. I mean, really, I knew I was doing the right thing for me.
Right. Have you had any moments, maybe now in your career, where you felt that sense of rightness or that memorable, such memoration?
Actually, when I went to the Grey Nuns, for sure, things have changed a little bit these days. But the pandemic, oh my goodness, has ripped the heart out of hospitals and people, of course. But when I discovered the Grey Nuns and moved and went to the Grey Nuns and started work there, which was about 25 years ago, it felt like a community, and I knew I'd made the right choice to go there. Mhm.
When I think of anesthesiologists, I think of the people putting needles in your arm or your body to kind of like sedate you. And I think I get most of this just from TV and movies and stuff.
Mhm.
But what's one thing people don't understand about your job?
Well, a lot of patients actually don't understand that we're with them all the time. First of all, a lot of people don't realize that we're physicians and have been trained just like the surgeon through a residency. So that's one thing. And a lot of patients are surprised and actually very comforted, of course, to find that you don't just pop out shopping during the case or anything, but you're actually there the whole time. But I think professionally, I think, and what a medical student or people thinking about anesthesia might not realize is there was this old stereotype of the socially awkward, not very communicative person who went into anesthesia because their patients were all asleep, and so that was fine. But in fact, the importance of relationship between an anesthetist and their patient as much as is possible, which is very possible in many situations, is and the ability to create a trusting relationship between you and the patient in a very short space of time, and how rewarding that is, I think, is something that people don't know. And people do remember you, or they do. They seem to remember me because we tend to go to sleep laughing, and hopefully we wake up smiling most of the time. So
Would you say that that ability to create relationships and strengthen bonds with patients, is that the best part of your job, or
I
is
think
there
it is.
another aspect?
No, it truly is. The ability to connect with somebody at a time when they're usually really scared, or like an obstetrics or something in a lot of pain, and the ability to connect with them and to help create this um, safe and supportive environment, and to create this trust that you are there, you are going to take care of them, you are going to be there the whole time. I find that is the most satisfying thing for me. And in fact, anytime when I've sort of experienced in this later part of my career anyway, burnout, and that for me, I would recognize burnout as being when I just kind of didn't have the energy or quite the oomph to go that extra bit to really try to connect with the patient.
Mhm. I guess there is, and I didn't think about this, but there is so much trust that the patient places on you because you're responsible for, I guess, setting the foundation of the surgery almost.
Well, the patient, of course, is usually, almost always, especially for electively, met their surgeon or, before, but they don't usually meet us. Even if they've gone through pre-surgical screening, they may well have met a different anesthetist. So they haven't met me before. And so that's one thing. And yes, and patients are have concerns. Different people have different concerns, of course, based on their experiences and all kinds of things. But an awful lot of people are very frightened to give up control, right, and fall asleep, and they're scared they're not going to wake up, and everything in between. So yeah, it's a huge thing.
Mhm. Yeah, and then you hear the horror stories on TV where sometimes
There's that,
patients wake up halfway through the procedure.
there's
And
that terrible movie. I can't remember what it was called. I didn't watch it, but yeah. So you want to assuage those, those fears, and try and understand what the patient is most concerned about, and then create an environment where they can go off to sleep, hopefully, smiling.
yeah. So then alternatively, what's the worst part of your job?
The worst, but do you know, I haven't taken call for a little while because of, the grey hair and being old, and because we've got lots of young people who want to do all that drama. But I think the worst part is really rushing in the middle of the night for an emergency surgery, and the stress of that, and really in the moment knowing that knowing that the patient needs a surgery, it's life-threatening. If we don't do anything, they're going to die, but also knowing in some very infrequent cases, but that the patient, you may be the last person the patient speaks to or hears your voice as they go off to sleep, and they may not wake up again. And this is really rare, but elderly people with a ruptured AAA or something like that, who, there are situations in which this is going to be true. So the worst part is if a patient is so sick that they don't
Mhm.
come out of the OR, that they die on the table. That's
Mhm.
a tragedy and a
Would
tough
you
thing.
would you say that there's a lot of instances where you are kind of called in the middle of the night, or?
There used to be. I think we've got things are much more organized now. Actually, the way the surgery kind of schedule at our place is organized, it's more likely that they've just kept working. In the old days, it was a bit more back and forth, back and forth. But it used to help me, to think about how the fact that all over the world, you weren't actually totally alone. You're kind of connected to this group of people, because all over the world there were anesthetists sitting in operating rooms doing emergencies, and somebody else is probably driving in at top speed as well. And there's a certain kind of, I don't know, I found that kind of comforting.
I'm sure that you and many other anesthesiologists have experienced strange situations or strange memories during your time in your role. What's the weirdest or grossest thing that's ever happened to you at work?
Well, I had a choice of two things, but I think I'll start with the weirdest one. So this is really weird. So a million years ago, I was working at the South London Hospital for Women, which was a really interesting hospital that had been set up for female patients, way back when, and was supposed to employ only female physicians. So it was a place for female physicians in the early days to work. And if you really couldn't find somebody in the right area, then you were forced to admit a non-female person. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. It was a really old hospital, and it had a long history. And I was a surgery resident at the time. And I got called, and you walked through this kind of, it was almost like it was like cloisters, like a covered walkway as you went out to go to the surgical ward. So I did that. And then I was coming back, and it was like, 3 a.m, and you're half asleep. And there was a nurse there, and in those days nurses wore the more traditional uniform and caps and all that, but this nurse was wearing very traditional uniform. And I said hello, and she didn't speak to me, and she just walked off in a direction across the courtyard that I didn't know where it was. It's a very small hospital. And then in the morning, I mentioned it, and I said, "Where would you have been going? What's over there?" And they said, "Oh, that's the morgue, Sue, and you've seen her too, have you?"
Oh my gosh, I literally got
I
goosebumps
have
right now.
too right now. And you know what? All the young women that worked in that place, I went and told them the story, and they were all really scared to go and answer their pages in the night. I was going to tell you a much more gross story, but it was a bit too personal, so I'll stick with the ghost story. That is a true thing. It's the only time, and it wasn't frightening. It was just weird. But then, yeah, then I discovered.
Oh my gosh, I have goosebumps right now. Oh my gosh.
Sorry. I can see it to this day, honest to goodness. I can see it to this day. And that was, gosh, 40 years ago.
Well, I guess it makes sense then why she was wearing the traditional uniform.
She really, really was. And then she just walked away. I don't know who she was, but she was
Ooh,
someone.
okay.
I know. Sorry.
Okay. So I guess when that happened, who did you go and tell
Oh, I
when you
told
found
all
out?
the girls. Oh, all the other junior doctors, because we were basically lived in that hospital. It was the bad old days where you were on call every other night, and we sort of, you know, lived there almost. And so I told them, and also the nurses, because I know we're leading into that. What about your support system, right? Questions and things, and nurses have always been a fundamental support system for me, because they're your colleagues who are right there.
Mhm.
And are always there, right, with you. You may be you're the only physician standing there, but there's always going to be one nursing staff there.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm. So I
Um,
would have talked to the nurses, and they said that. And then I talked to all the junior doctors and scared them to death.
oh, oh, so can you tell us a little bit more about your support system and what they might mean?
Yeah, I from the get-go, I've always found that I needed to have a female support system. And so, like early on in Britain, it would have been the nurses, because I felt quite isolated we kept moving jobs every 6 months and stuff in Britain, so it's a bit different. Here, as soon as I finished residency here, where I did a couple of years, I founded something which was a group called the Sleeping Beauties, which is the female anaesthetists of Edmonton, which has rather fallen asleep again recently, but hopefully we can resuscitate it before I retire next year. But yeah, so the Sleeping Beauties used to get together and just, you know, on a regular basis and have supper and just connect, because there weren't that many of us actually, and we were scattered across the city, and at different times there's been more schisms between the different institutions than there are now, and it was a way to connect with people. And then of course, so there's professionally who you have, and then at home my husband has been a stalwart supporter of me through some very tough times at work, and it's something that we don't recognize, I think, how much what we go through, especially if you're someone like me who sort of, you know, talks about everything, you know, it can be quite a burden on somebody. So yeah, my husband has stuck it out very nobly.
We've had a number of other doctors on this series so far, and they all have different perspectives when we ask that question about support systems. Some say make sure that you have colleagues in medicine and other healthcare colleagues because they might understand more what you're
Yes.
going through. Some say really make sure that you have friends and support members outside of
Mhm.
medicine because they can kind of keep you grounded. So what would you say?
Well, my problem was really, you see, that I left England, did that trip, met my husband, who is from here, on the trip, got married on the trip, and ended up here. So I knew nobody here. So and so you know, that is one thing that I have missed out on, is non-medical friends, and I'm really aware of that as I approach retirement. So I've always had medical friends, a non-medical husband, but lots of nurses and other physicians in his family. So I would agree very much with that, I think. But I do think that what you fundamentally want is I think you need somebody, and for me it would have been a medical person that you could call at 3 a.m. I have a job share partner now who is my very good friend, and she would be that person for me.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That's great to hear. We are talking more about physician self-care and
Mm-hmm.
finding out how to take care of yourself in what works for your own kind of personality and situations.
Mm-hmm. For
Thank you.
sure.
Um, I guess thinking back when you had went on that trip and you had kind of you thought you had ended your residency and you know were done with that kind of life. If you weren't doing your current job, what do you think you would have been doing?
Um, I actually had thought I would go back to England in the end and do English literature. So goodness knows where that would have gone. But I've really always been drawn to psychology, and I really, although like that can be very, very demanding in its own way. And I did took some time off and trained as a clinical hypnotherapist at one point in about 15 years ago, and I really enjoyed it and it taught me a lot, but I also realized how emotionally demanding that is. And sometimes it's nice to be the person putting someone to sleep and putting a tube down. So, but really my fantasy would be to be a writer.
I,
And
at one point, thought I wanted to be a writer as well.
yeah,
Yeah.
I have this little newsletter, which is Sue's News, which comes out every month or so, and has various little bits and pieces in it, and lots of jokes. And I've done that for a long time, and seems to cheer a lot of people up. So I have to work out how that's going to morph, because when I retire next year, Sue's News has to stop, I think, and change to something else.
Is the topic related to medicine or anything?
It's basically just wellness. At one point, I was the director of wellbeing for Anesthesia and for the city or for the department, I suppose, the university department. And I thought, what am I going to do? And I thought, I know, I'll put little bits and pieces together. So it has varied a bit, but it's usually got some positive stuff, some art, some poetry. It's probably shamelessly copyright breaking, but lots of stuff off of Twitter. It justifies my Twitter obsession, lots of jokes and things. And lots of people say they love the jokes, but I know a lot of other people like all sorts of things about it. And sometimes it will raise issues like mental health and physicians, and the physician family support program, of which I am a massive supporter, and things like that, and just things that make you just feel better without being too soppy.
Well, everyone, if you are interested, check out Sue's News and subscribe.
Yes, it's on. If you follow me on Twitter at Susan Jean Reid, then I usually post it up there. It's also on the Department of Anesthesiologist's website, but it might be slightly hard to find, but it is on there as well. Mm-hmm.
All right. And one last question. If
Mm-hmm.
you could give some advice to someone who might be considering your career, what would you tell them?
I would tell them that anesthesia specifically is well, first of all, anesthesia right now, we're in desperately short supply, so you're going to have a lot of choice, always going to have a job. But what I would say is that there are lots of places for different people with different interests and different qualities and strengths to work in anesthesia. You can be the liver transplant intensive care person. You can be the obstetric anaesthetist. You can be the chronic pain person. You can be a mixture of all those things. But I think anesthesia very much lends itself to a wide variety of personalities, and my advice would be yourself. Remember that you are a human being first. As I've written about this in Sue's News, whatever you think medicine is, or your actual specialty is, whether you think it's a calling or a job or a career or a business, whatever it is, you are first of all human being with a life which I can tell you goes by real quick. And so I think you need to make sure that you make your own choices. Don't give your power away. I've done that way too much. And follow your heart and your own intuition. Have a mentor that you can connect with, and find your tribe. Find your tribe. Because to sustain a career, you need to feel that you are at home where you are, that you belong where you are at work, but also that you belong where you are when you're not at work.
I can relate to that, and I think that's great advice for anyone in any industry. So thank you so much for joining us on Surgery Secrets today and for being part of our series.
You're welcome. Thank you for asking me.
And there you have it. Join us next time on Surgery Secrets for a look in surgery today. Follow us on LinkedIn for exclusive new Surgery Secrets episodes, and check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And for more information about Surgery 101, check out our website, surgery101.org. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.